Hello and welcome to the online class Introduction to Sustainability. My name is Ciprian Stănescu and I'm happy to take this journey of discovery with you. We go from what sustainability is to what a sustainable business model looks like, what are some circularity principles, and with a specific tool we developed at Social Innovation Solutions, the Sustainable Transformation Canvas. So what is sustainability? Well, there's a lot of definitions around the world. Now, imagine you are offered a piece of cake. It is immediately available to you and it looks incredibly delicious. Now, imagine you are a farmer and you can choose to plant crops on the same field you did last year because the price of these crops is higher than ever. Now, what do? In these two cases, you are faced with a question. Should I use all the resources that I have to obtain an immediate type of pleasure or profit, or should I make a plan having in mind a long-term perspective? Maybe you're also on a diet, right? It might be a good idea to leave some cake for later or to leave the field rest for this year, as intensive agriculture has the potential to destroy it. Now, from a neuroscience perspective, these actions are linked to the concept of delayed gratification, for which the prefrontal cortex is in charge. That is the part of the brain planning complex cognitive behavior, personality expression, decision-making, and moderating social behavior. So what does all this have to do with sustainability, the topic of this course? Well, sustainability does not just happen, and financial resources are not going to be enough. It is first and foremost based on a shared understanding that we need to act for the future of our planet, people, and businesses. But this needs a significant change in attitudes, as well as an introduction into how one can actually become more sustainable as an individual, as a business, as a country, or not. The most common definition of sustainability is the following, quote, "Sustainable development is the development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs." Gro Harlem Brundtland, former Prime Minister of Norway. So what are the main pillars of sustainability, one might ask? Well, first of all, environmental sustainability. What is environmental sustainability? Well, ecological integrity is maintained, all of the Earth's environmental systems are kept in balance, while natural resources within them are consumed by humans at a rate where they are able to replenish themselves. A second pillar of sustainability is obviously economic sustainability, which is the ability to maintain community independence and have access to resources. Economic systems are intact and activities are available to everyone in an inclusive manner. And switching to inclusivity and social sustainability, this pillar talks about the universal basic rights and basic necessities that are attainable by all people who have access to enough resources in order to keep their families and communities healthy, secured, and their rights respected. Following that, what are some of the outputs of sustainability for a company? Well, good governance. This is expected to produce long-term benefits to shareholders and creditors, principally from the reduction of risk driven by the formation of strong internal controls and effective board oversight. Higher environmental ratings suggest operational efficiency, reducing liability profile by actively managing the firm footprint, for example, waste, emissions, carbon footprints. High scores in the social dimension suggest an effective management of human capital, first of all, safety of products and services, or positioning to realize opportunities from increased social inclusion. If we look at the business world, corporate sustainability is an approach aiming to create long-term stakeholder value through the implementation of a medium to long-term business strategy that focuses on the ethical, social, environmental, cultural, and economic dimensions of doing business. One example of a large sustainable company is Ørsted, rated by the Canadian research company Corporate Knights as the most sustainable company in the world in 2020. Now, Ørsted is a Danish energy company known for its offshore wind turbine farms. The interesting aspect of this company is that it used to be called Danish Oil and Natural Gas Company. As the name states, the main ways to obtain energy were from the rather conventional ones until 2017, when the company changed its name and vision. Now, Ørsted is the global leader in offshore wind power, having the goal to become carbon neutral by 2025. BlockZ develops energy management software and blockchain technology to bring provenance and activity monitoring to the renewable energy market. The white label platform enables energy retailer clients to verify the origin, ownership, and obviously consumption of green energy in real time, therefore increasing acquisition and retention of eco-conscious end users, both corporates and individuals. Schneider Electric is in the top 3 of the most sustainable companies in the world. It is specialized in offering energy and automation digital solutions for homes, business centers, buildings, infrastructure, data centers, etc., etc. How they do it, similar to Ørsted, which we talked about before, Schneider Electric's initial profile was centered on less sustainable fields, steel, iron, and armaments. Then it switched to electricity, and finally in 2010, it adopted the current sustainable vision through the motto "Life is on." Their main trademark is EcoStructure. Going to Romania, let's take a case study of a company called Heidelberg Cement. Heidelberg Cement is one of the world's largest manufacturers of building materials used in the construction of houses, traffic routes, commercial and industrial facilities. The core activities of Heidelberg Cement include the production and distribution of cement and aggregates, the two essential raw, let's call them, materials for concrete. The production of cement is responsible for 5 to 8% of global carbon dioxide emissions. The substances emitted into the air and water during the production of concrete contribute not only to global warming, but also acidification and eutrophication. What can be done in order to restore the balance between negative and positive impact in the cement and aggregates industry? Well, techniques such as carbon capture and storage, CCS, material substitution, alternative fuels, or energy efficiency technology have been identified as some of the approaches to produce more sustainable cement. The only way to a sustainable future is to take effective action towards carbon neutrality. Heidelberg Cement Group, as we were talking, has major plans in the countries in which they operate in order to support the international sustainability agenda. In Romania, for example, Heidelberg Cement's investment in environmental protection rose to almost 490 million euros and are aimed at implementing the most advanced standards and technology for the reduction of noise, emissions and dust. The alternative fuels rates have increased yearly. So yes, this is a way of actually becoming more sustainable even in an industry that is highly polluted. The concrete industry struggles with a large carbon footprint, but there are many solutions. The only struggle is depending on the consumers to choose the groups who put out climate as a priority. Now that we see some of the outputs of having a sustainable company and even society, how could we also measure it? Well, at the global level, for starter, GDP is not enough anymore. As the European Commission puts it, there is a need for sustainable indices which consider the modern challenges such as climate change, poverty, over-exploitation of resources, health and quality of life. For example, launched in 2007 by the EU and OECD, the Beyond GDP initiative aims to identify the best indices for measuring progress. In the same time, the Dow Jones Index, for example, includes several sustainability versions, the Dow Jones Sustainability Indices, while the Gender Equality Index, launched by Bloomberg a couple of years ago in 2018, helps to measure the gender differences that still restrict women's development and independence in many sectors across many economies. We also have the SDG Index, of course, which offers a clear account of how countries are moving towards the final goals. And unfortunately, we're not moving fast enough. We will talk later in the course about the need for funding sustainable development, but let me just say that we have an estimate annual gap to reach the SDGs of about $2.3 trillion. The road from trillions to thousands of dollars or euro may look long, but it's actually quite short. A sustainable world is, well, everyone's business, including the business of businesses. How do we measure that our activity is actually sustainable and forward-thinking? Some aspects of sustainability are not easy to measure, as some data is considered latent or not immediately measurable. For this reason, it's important to identify and invent key performance indicators that produce data that can be measured through specific tools and clear to understand systems. Let's look now at 5 indicators to measure sustainability in your company, thanks to our friends from the Bocconi University in Italy. Number 1, conformity. The first indicator for a company's sustainability related to respecting the rules and national or international standards. For example, a measurable indicator, a KPI, can be the amount of fines you get or could get. Number 2, the use of materials and the measurement of performance. This second KPI measures the number of resources and raw materials that are used, the amount of waste and emissions that you generate. If you're a company that doesn't produce goods but services, think of the intellectual inputs and if this is done in a fair and sustainable way, for example. A third principle is about effects or impact. What are the effects that your company produces? Do you have an environmental impact that you measure? What kind of regulation do you have for protecting your employees? Another example of a sustainable company is probably the most famous of them all. You may have heard about the fast fashion industry and its environmental and social impact. Fast fashion refers to cheap and short-lasting clothing based on the current trends and whose production has an enormous environmental footprint. So let's take the case of the outdoor clothing company Patagonia. This company is a bit different than other clothing companies because its core values are based on encouraging reuse and repair of its products and environmental and animal protection. Another example of a sustainable company is organicbasics from Denmark. When you toss out your old jeans, have you ever wondered what happens to them? What is your overall impact when you buy a new product versus a circular product? The circular fashion industry is defined as a regenerative system in which garments are circulated for as long as their maximum value is retained, and then returned safely to the biosphere when they are no longer of use. In a circular model, products are designed and developed with the next use in mind. Yet another circular fashion industry player, like organicbasics, entered the scene. Circularity in fashion is stated to be the future model that will be used by companies all over the world, ideally, to reduce their carbon footprint and educate consumers about the overall impact of the industry. Organic Basics is a clothing brand that is getting rid of big logos and big price tags while setting higher standards for fashion sustainability. From sustainable materials, production, and workplace standards to the entire business model, Organic Basics is constantly optimizing its environmental and social footprints and becoming a model to the entire fashion industry. Besides the fact that the company's mission statement since the beginning was to introduce sustainability on every level, they also made sure that their website, for example, is a low-impact website. Number 4, the supply chain and the product life cycle. If you want to become a sustainable company, it is really important to take into account the whole product life cycle, from the choice of raw materials to the final sale. For this reason, it's important to acknowledge if the suppliers use renewable energy, for example, the amount of CO2 produced by moving the products, if the product may be recycled or reused, and so on. In short, if you see yourself as a sustainable company but have no idea how the products you sell or resell are made, you might have a high reputational risk in the future. Number 5, a sustainable system. Now, the last indicator from the Bocconi University represents how the company acts in the social context. It evaluates national or international relationships and the local impact. This indicator also shows the impact on the life quality of the employees and the local community, as well as the families of these employees. Now, one might also ask, why should we measure sustainability? It has higher costs than actually doing nothing, right? True, but if you stay where you are, the future might just catch you by surprise, a future in which your competitors are more sustainable and not just say they are more sustainable. Now let's have a look at some of the benefits of measuring sustainability in your organization. So, number 1 benefit of measuring your organization, sustainability. Now, if you constantly measure, you know what is wrong and what you can fix. It's the simplest of principles. Number 2, your investors and future investors will become really interested in how you relate to the triple bottom line measure, environmental, social, governance, the 3 ESG criteria. Now, 1/3 of investors are planning to increase their exposure to sustainable organizations. Number 3, sustainability boosts resilience. During the COVID-19 pandemic, sustainable companies experienced less negative shock returns than their unsustainable competitors. Measuring sustainability as an internal business process gives focus to address business risk items like never before. Number 4, traditional performance measurements relate to a shareholder point of view mainly. This, has evolved over the past decades into a multidimensional measurement system that accounts for different fields and stakeholder interests. From the families of your employees to the local community you work with and even your future customers. Number 5, well, when you measure sustainability, your employees and partners have a deeper understanding of the long-term impact that you as a group might have. In a world in which everyone moves fast from company to company, retaining talent is key to any future development. So how does sustainability measurement processes look like? Well, much like an innovation process. Check out our other course on Introduction to Innovation for more on innovation management. Coming back to how we measure our sustainability journey and how this transforms in business value as well, here's a couple of guidelines to help you really go forward. Number 1, invent a point-based system that measures in your organization various things like office space, transportation, initiative level, etc. A numerical score in your company creates a positive competition among employees and even collaboration between departments, and supports the initiatives of your employees. Number 2, make an internal audit. You can use classical global standards like ISO 14001, the natural step or triple bottom line accounting, and GRI to report and examine operating methods. Over 60% of executives these days stated that the biggest challenge is integrating sustainability throughout the organization. Now, through observation and survey, an internal audit can really help here. And an audit is not an exam. An audit is like an X-ray. It tells you what bones are fractured and how you can fix it so that you don't fall again. Number 3, benchmark your behavior. Sustainability benchmark systematically evaluate business performance relative to a sustainability standard, company, NGO, or any other stakeholder. Benchmarks have real implications for investment flows, supporting companies, consumers, and investors to define what is acceptable and what is necessary. Meeting these benchmark standards drives up responsible and sustainable practices and filters down unsustainable operations. Number 4, which is my favorite, metrics and data. Carbon footprint calculations have become a rather popular metric among everyone. However, this is just one sustainability metric among several that can offer you a real deep dive into how your business really is.